In today's video, I'm going to give you guys some tips on how you can improve your detailed product photography shots. I'm going to go and get started, so I'll see you in just a sec. Hi guys, I'm Ben from Adaptalux, and today we are looking at product photography once again. We've already covered how to get those main catalogue shots either with a white background or a black background. I'll link those videos up in the top right hand corner for you to get started. But when it comes to product photography, those detail shots can be just as important as the main catalogue shots. Showing the detail of your products can be a really great motivator for your customers to take that leap to purchase your product. It gives trust in the product and the build quality. It shows a lot more detail about what the product is about, what it's made of. So you can't neglect those alternative images, the close-up shots, and the alternative angles of your products. Now, there's probably two reasons why you would be taking some product photography. A, you're trying to sell your own products, in which case you're going to already have a pretty good intimate knowledge of the products that you're selling. The other case is that you're working for a client, photographing their products for them to sell them online. In that case, you need to have a really in-depth discussion before you start taking your photographs as to what the client actually wants, what parts of their products are interesting, important to show off, and what would grab the customer's attention. So once you've got a good idea of what parts of your product you need to take a closer look at, it's time to get out a macro lens and get a little bit closer. Having access to a macro lens will allow you to get much closer to your products. It'll show off textures and the build materials that your products are made of. For example, this little Xbox controller here. You generally wouldn't notice that this has got a little fine texture on the grips here, but under our macro lens we can easily show off that this has got a very nice texture, it's got an ergonomic shape, and we can get really close to all of these details on the front and really show off the attention to detail that's gone into the design of this product. So I'll be using this little Xbox controller to give you a couple of examples of how you might go about getting close-up shots of your products. I'm going to be using this setup right here, which is a 100mm f2.8 Tachyna lens on the front of my Sony a7 III, and I've got a nice little tripod here and a focus stacking rail. Now, focus stacking might not be something that you're interested in for your product photography. It very much depends on how many products you've got to get through and how much time you've got on your hands. If you're only taking pictures of a few products and you want to get really perfect shots with a lot of detail and no depth of field, then stacking might be a way to go. However, if you've got hundreds of products to get through and you maybe want 5 shots of each product, you're going to end up with thousands of images when you start stacking them, so it's up to you whether you want to invest that amount of time. I am going to be stacking my shots today just so that I can really get nice sharp images of my products. It's something that I like to do with our product shots as well. I've been taking a lot of those recently for our upcoming flash launch, and I've been stacking all of my shots so that we can get the maximum amount of sharpness out of those images and really show off the build quality of our products. The last thing we're going to need for our little shoot here is some lighting, and lighting your close-up product shots is quite different to lighting your main product shots. You're probably using some sort of softboxes or maybe some LED panels to light your white background and your product when you're taking a picture of the entire thing, but when you get up close, it's beneficial to have a little bit more control over your light so that you can direct it to exactly where you need it and draw attention to the parts of the image that you really want people to focus on. It allows you to get a little bit more creative and a little bit more eye-catching with those secondary shots. So for my lighting, I'm going to be bringing in the Adaptalux Studio, which is sat down here on the mini tripod, and I'm going to bring in some lighting arms so we can plug these in and direct them to be exactly where we need the light on our product, and when you start adding additional lighting arms as well, you can direct that light down onto the background or other parts of your image, and it really allows you to get very creative with the look and feel of those secondary shots. My Xbox controller is predominantly white and black, with the exception of a little splash of colour on those face buttons. So that's going to be something that was a very deliberate design choice, and something that probably the designer of the product would want to show off to the customers. I'm going to focus in on those buttons and get a nice shot of them showing off that little splash of colour amongst all of the white. To do that, I've composed my shot nice and close, and I'm going to bring in some lighting. So the first light that I need is a key light, which is going to be the main light on the front of my product. I'm going to bring in this white lighting arm with a diffuser as close as I can without actually bringing the light source into my image. Now that looks pretty nice already, but the top right hand corner of the image is still looking a little bit dark. It's because we're overlapping the edge of the product a little bit, and the shadow that is down here is actually going to come off as a dull grey, which isn't very pleasing to the eye. That's what our second lighting arm is going to be for. I'm going to bring in this lighting arm and point it not only at the shadow, but also the top edge of the product just up here, where you can see that it's just giving off a little glow. Now that looks pretty nice to me. It's really making those colors pop, but I just wanted to give you an example of if you are using a less controllable light source, maybe a big softbox or something like that, that is a little bit harder to move and manipulate. For example, if our light were over here, you'll see that there's great big reflections on those shiny buttons. You can't now see those A, B, X and Y. You can't see the colors quite as well, and that's because that big light source is just in the wrong position. Being able to move your light off to the side and position it exactly where you need it, you can control those reflections and place them in more pleasing spots. Now I'm pretty happy with the way that this image is looking. I'm going to stack this image by moving my camera in and out of the scene, and hopefully I'll get a nice fully sharp image of my face buttons on the controller. I'm pretty happy with that image. I also took one of the other buttons on the front of the controller as well, and I think it's predominantly down to the focus stacking. If I wasn't focus stacking these images, I would have a very shallow depth of field, a very soft focus on the majority of the product, and that, although might be good for certain products and certain types of images, I don't think it's very good for a product like this, which has got very clean lines and everything should be nice and sharp and pristine. So focus stacking allows you to combat that shallow depth of field from photographing up this close. It does take more time, as I mentioned earlier on. It can very easily get up into the hours of processing afterwards, so it's definitely down to you whether you want to try this technique. If you don't know how to focus stack, I'll link up in the top right hand corner to a full tutorial on exactly how to focus stack. In brief, it's basically moving the camera forward or backwards, taking images at intervals. So as you move the camera closer or further away, it's going to move your plane of focus through your image, and you're going to gather cross sections of your image in focus. And then after you've got a full stack of images, you can process that stack in some software afterwards, and it will combine all of the images and pick only the parts of each image that is most in focus. That can allow you to get the entire image completely in focus, which I think is a big benefit to product photography up close like this. When you start getting this close to products, there starts to be a little bit of a problem with dust and dirt, scratches, imperfections. Especially if your product is not brand new and straight off the shelf, you can certainly get a lot of things like that showing up and being really noticeable in your images, far more noticeable than they would be if the customer had the products in their own hands. Nobody looks at things that closely under a magnification of this kind of factor, so you definitely want to be aware and super meticulous with cleaning your products and making sure everything is perfect before you take your images. There's nothing worse than taking a full stack of images, or maybe a full set of images of your product, and then realizing that actually this one has a very small scratch on it, or it has some dirt that's come from some unknown place in the factory. It's always worth having a microfiber cloth nearby just to give everything a last minute wipe down, and then try not to touch anything, especially reflective surfaces. It's really easy to just get a fingerprint on something reflective and it will show up in your images when you're this close. You can sometimes try and combat this with your lighting if you notice it while you're taking your shot, but generally you're not going to see these things until you get them up on the computer screen. Now, if you do notice something afterwards, then you can always try and clone it out, but that's not ideal. I would try and factor in a little bit of extra time for cleaning your products before you take your shots, and probably a little bit of extra time in post-processing for checking for that type of thing, and for maybe cloning some imperfections out. Now, I've got one last tip for you guys, and it's to do with making your product stand out a little bit. Your main product shots, the ones that sit out on the storefront among all of the other products, they're usually going to be pretty consistent. Most shops want a white background or perhaps a black background, but very plain, just showing off the product itself so that the product stands out from the background and nothing is too distracting on the shop front. However, your secondary shots, your close-ups, and your detail shots are generally hidden within the product listing itself. So once a customer has found those close-up shots, they're generally only looking at one product, and you can start to get a little bit more creative with how you show off that product. So for my Xbox controller here, it's quite hard to do that. We've got a white product and a white background. If you were to take a detail shot, say, of the trigger buttons against this white background, those trigger buttons are not really going to stand out all that well from the white of the background, and it's just going to look very washed out. So to combat that, we can start getting a little bit more creative with our lighting and with some color. And that's what I wanted to do for my last shot of my Xbox controller. I wanted to differentiate the white product from the white background. The way I've done that is by simply changing the color of the background. I've been using our background gradient cards, which are just little pieces of card with colored gradients on them, and they're really handy for having around to match colors to either the product or to the brand or to the brand of the store that they're going in. So I've got a nice green background gradient card underneath my white controller. Green is generally the brand for Xbox. I think they're moving a little bit away from that now, but it's still relevant, and I think it looks really nice in contrast to the white of the controller. I've done something else with my lighting as well. This is a bit of a more complex shot because we're looking at an edge. If I were to light it from only one direction, say with this light, the other side would be in shadow. So I've got two white lights coming down either side of my Xbox's trigger. Now that leaves a little bit of a shadow underneath the controller, which is what this white light at the back is for, and it's got a green color filter on that light, so it's just giving a nice green highlight underneath the controller itself, which I think is quite subtle, but it's also something that will bring out that image and just make it a little bit more noticeable to the eye and highlight some of those interesting features on the product. Product photography can be tricky, time-consuming, frustrating at times, but it can also be really fun and really creative if you allow yourself a little bit of extra freedom in those close-up and detail shots. They're the ones that are going to show in the product listing rather than out on the shop front, so you can add a little bit more variety and really start to sell the details of the product. Now, I think the most important tip that I've given you today was actually that very first one. Talk to your client, and know your product. It's no good going out and taking all of these detail shots only to find out that actually that part of the product wasn't supposed to be shown, or the colors don't really fit with the website that they're going on. There could be a whole multitude of different factors that the designer of the product might not want, or the designer of the website might not be happy with. So talk to everybody else that you're involved with and make sure that your products are going to fit in the environment that they're suited for. I'm going to leave it there for now, but if you want some more tips, make sure to hit the subscribe button, because we have new tutorials every 2 weeks right here on the channel, most of which are close-up, macro and product related, so you'll get lots more info just by watching our other videos. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button so that I know that you enjoyed this content and you'd like some more in the future. If you are trying to shoot something really specific, go ahead and let us know down in the comments. I'm sure everybody else will have some insight on how to improve your product photography and shoot something really specific, and I'll try and chip in as well. For now, that is all that I've got time for though, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.